Chapter 10, Money and Banking. So we are starting a new unit in the book, and we are transitioning from microeconomics to macroeconomics. So microeconomics is the study of individuals and businesses and how they make decisions with their resources. Macroeconomics is bigger scale, and we are looking at how nations, countries, make decisions with their resources, taxes, programs, and trade with other nations. So we're halfway through the year, and microeconomics is done, and now we're focused on macro. So in this chapter, we'll be looking at how well do financial institutions serve our needs. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at some basic banking and how that works and operates. So by the time we get done with this section, you should be able to understand why currency has an important role in society, in the economy, its characteristics, and why it has value. So we're going to answer the question, how does money serve the needs of our society? How does money serve the needs of our society? Well, when economists talk about money, they think of it in three ways. A medium of exchange, a unit of account, and store of value. And we're going to take a better look at each and every one of these when it comes to classifying something as money. So let's start with the first one, money as a medium of exchange. So what does that mean? It means to use to determine values during the exchange of goods and services. So it needs to be something that would be able to be exchanged with something else. No better way of doing that than to use a currency to be able to exchange items. So there must be a way to transfer it back and forth. So money provides that transfer when it comes to this. The alternative to money would be bartering. Now we would find bartering in a traditional economy. So a small traditional economy would use the bartering system because obviously they wouldn't have their own, more than likely they won't have their own type of currency. So bartering would be used by a traditional economy. Could a society survive with using a bartering system? Absolutely, it could. Now, it would make modern life a lot more difficult. So when you went to the store just to buy a can of pop or whatever it might be, it'd be a lot more difficult to be able to make a transaction because now you have to negotiate and barter with the clerk and explain why this is worth $1 for the exchange of the good. So bartering, it could exist, but again, traditional economy is where we find more bartering system. Let's look at an example here. So look at each one of these. How much would you be willing to pay for a kitten? How much would you be willing to pay for a puppy? Now, depending on who you are, some might say 0 for the kitten, $1 million for the dog, or vice versa. Kind of depends if you're a dog person or a cat person. But you would have a dollar amount in your mind that would be the maximum amount that you'd be willing to pay. So if we ask the same question, so think about it for a second. How much would you be willing to pay for one of each? What would they cost? Okay, now that you have that dollar amount in your mind, what would you be willing to barter for those? So now you can't use currency, you have to use something else. Would it be a pair of shoes? Would it be your car? Would it be your lunch money? Or not your lunch money, but your lunch itself? What would you be willing to barter? Okay, then you think you have value in that. Now the person that owns this kitten or this puppy, you would then have to figure out if what you have is value to them. So you can see how this totally slows down how modern society would be. So there's an importance here for money. So medium of exchange was the first one, that it needs to be able to be exchangeable. The second one is a means for comparing the values of goods and services. A means of comparison, meaning that if you go to the store and you're looking to buy a jacket, it has a price tag on it. There is a means for comparing the values. If I want to buy a pair of shoes, I can look at different pairs of shoes and the prices. There's a comparison there. It's not, okay, this pair of shoes is you had to barter a t-shirt, this one is a gold bar, this one is a toothpick. I mean, there is a way to compare these in value. So prices provide this one using money. Other countries, unit of account, these are the ones that are used. At one time, I was looking up a currency for Holland, and they actually used tulips as currency as one time. So imagine how difficult that would have been. So, medium of exchange, money as a unit of account, a means for comparing. And the third characteristic, or the third definition for money, is it must have a store value, meaning that you could put it in a vault or put it away and it would still have value 3 months, 6 months, 2 years from now. Now, with currency, there is inflation, so your money could be devalued over time because if inflation goes up, your money will go down as a result, because let's say your dollar is really worth $1 today, and over this next year you don't use that dollar, inflation goes up by 10%. Now your dollar is only worth 90 cents because now 10% has gone up. Now everything is now cost 10% more. So now that dollar is not worth as much. But imagine though, trying to store something else that wouldn't be outdated or wouldn't spoil or whatever it might be. So the third characteristic or the third definition for this money would be it has to be storable. All right, characteristics of money. So currency is a coin or a paper bill used as money. So here's some examples from the past of currency that has been used. Cattle, precious stones, porpoise teeth, wheat, tulip bulbs, olive oil. I mean, can you imagine walking around with dried fish or having to carry around seashells and you accidentally trip? Well, there goes your currency. Or you have to carry around a big bottle of olive oil. Okay, that will be a third a cup for this item that you're purchasing. So, characteristics of money. There are certain characteristics that need to be followed to be considered currency or characteristic of money. So, here they are. There's 6 of them. First one, durability. This means it must be easy to carry, or it'd be able to withstand if it gets wet or someone draws on it or crumples it up or whatever it might be. I believe the average life for $1 bill is actually about a year. If it can get through a year, it's doing pretty well. The second characteristic would be portability. Easy to carry, small and light. This would eliminate cattle. That'd be very difficult to do for this one. Divide into smaller amounts, divisibility. So this might be a problem when dealing with tulips. So if something's 2.5 tulips, how do you cut it evenly to make sure it's divisible when it comes to this? Uniform. Well, if we have porpoise teeth or precious gems, they're all going to be different shapes and sizes. So it's not going to be the same when it comes to this. Uniformity, same thing. Limited supply. This would be, can't use rice for this because as a result of that, you can get rice anywhere. So that kind of limits that characteristic. And then acceptability. What if one country accepts porpoise teeth and the other one doesn't, and then they do precious jewels, and it'd be very difficult for this. So they're the characteristics that we'd find when it comes to the characteristics of money. Question for you. You get to answer this in the questionnaire that's on Schoology. Why would gold cease to be a good form of currency if scientists could create gold out of sand? So, in order for gold to be a characteristic of money, it would have to match up all these characteristics here. But if they can just use sand to create gold, which one of these would the characteristic be lacking? So you can answer that in Schoology. This is just information how much it actually cost in order to create some of this currency. So $1, 5.5 cents almost. $5 bill, 10. all the way up to a $100 bill, 12.7 cents. The $100 bills are getting fancier each time. Now they have this blue strip on top of it. There's watermarks. The reason they do that is just try to eliminate fraud that takes place. So again, this is just a chart for your information to see what things cost for each to print. All right, so there are three different types of money that economists will claim counts as money. The first one is considered a commodity. Now, a commodity is an object that has value. So it's not a printed dollar. It's an actual object that can be traded or used for this. So during the early times of the American colonies, they would use commodity money when it came to this. So salt, cattle, gems, tobacco, corn, and cotton. Again, this would be used in a small traditional economy. Second, we have representative money. So this means that the dollar or the piece of paper is backed up as an IOU, meaning it is worth money. It is worth something because there's value behind it. This was used in the early foundation of colonial times from Massachusetts. Kind of how the banker kind of all got started was actually from the goldsmith. So the goldsmith in the town was obviously the most wealthy individual in town, and people would store their gold at the goldsmith location because they probably were the more secure as well. And then as a result of that, the goldsmith would give out these receipts, and then the receipts could be used within town to be able to pay for different items, and then the clerk, after receives these receipts, could take it to the goldsmith and cash it in for gold. So basically it's an IOU. We have something called a specie. This is of gold or silver. Excuse me. And it's usually backed by paper money. And then we had gold and silver certificates. And this is backed by currency as well. So if you ever heard the term, it's not worth a continental or something like that, that is from the Articles of Confederation, where it talks about our currency. And that is one of the first currencies we used was this continental. And it wasn't worth anything because it wasn't backed up by anything. When we talk about the Articles of Confederation, we'll figure out how bad financially our young nation was at that point. And lastly, fiat money. And this is what fiat money is. It basically is the government says it's worth the amount that it says on the piece of paper, and because they said it, it is. There is no question of, is this really worth $1? The government says it is, then yes, it is worth $1. So if you take a better look at your currency, you will see something on there that says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So that dollar bill that you have is really just paper that is backed by the U.S. federal government, stating that it is really worth that money. So even though that we may not have gold or silver to back up the money that you have in your pocket, the government says it's worth that amount, and as a result of that, it really is worth that amount. So fiat money. So what did we look at? We looked at the three definitions of what is considered money. We looked at the different characteristics of what money looks like. Then we looked at the three categories of money. Those were commodities. We have commodities here, representative, and fiat money. This is the end of Chapter 10, Section 1. If there are any questions, please let me know.